Where are the realistic sellers? Where are they? Are they a absolute, are they Bigfoot? Like, do they even exist? Because in Florida, we are experiencing the strangest phenomena. We're going to talk about that right now. Many of you tell me that you've been on the fence since 2003, waiting to get off the fence because it's always been your dream to live in Florida, and you're not about to give that dream up now for North Carolina, Tennessee, Georgia, or Texas. You want to move to Florida, you and many other people. So let's do a little dive into history for a brief moment and remind all of ourselves that we got into this position recently because of COVID. We all know this. That really truly caused things to go absolutely haywire. And some of the things we don't talk about with that, yes, so many people flooded, mass exodus to Florida in the hopes of freedom within their state, because so many people just felt suffocated in the states they were living in. So because they had the opportunity to work remotely, they took that opportunity and they moved their entire family to Florida. That happened. Absolutely happened. The other thing that happened is many people that started thinking, okay, well, you know what? It's always been my dream to live a boating lifestyle. And if I'm going to live in Florida, then I want to be on the water. They either brought the boats that they have, or they bought boats and they brought the boats down or based their purchase on the ability to get on the water. So that caused that enormous boom into Cape Coral, because Cape Coral has all those canals. Now, a lot of people did not realize that some of those canals are an hour idle in the Florida heat out to open water. Some people didn't realize that if you're on a skinny canal, like less than 30 feet in width, it doesn't really feel so much like a canal. It feels like a sewer, and you're looking over at your neighbor's kitchen. But we're not talking about Cape Coral today. That is how that happened. That's how we ended up with this enormous boom. People wanted out of their states, and the bidding wars happened, and all of the numbers went to a number that was completely unrealistic. We said we'd never live that life again. In 2005, we said we'd never live that life again. Guess what? It happened again. Now that the Florida experiment is ending for so many people, maybe they didn't like it, maybe they can't afford it, maybe it doesn't feel like home, maybe they've been sent home by their companies, and their companies have said no longer can you work remotely, or we're going to cut your position altogether. So a lot of people are trying to sell and get back to their home states. So let me tell you what's happened. An absolute bursting of inventory. We have so much inventory in Florida, it is absolutely insane. Florida also is number 2 in the nation, according to Realtor.com. In the first quarter, where we just ended the first quarter of 2025. So in the first quarter of 2025, we are number 2 in the U.S. in terms of price cuts at 31.4. By the way, you might be wondering, wow, who was number 1? Who was higher than that? It was Arizona, and number 3 was Georgia. Texas was 4th, by the way. So those are the states that are right now getting hit the hardest. We have more inventory in Florida than we've seen in decades. So especially if you're looking for a condo, I say this all the time, if you're looking for a condo, I mean, they're a dime a dozen. Just choose what you like and go for it if that's what you're looking for. But the single family homes, same problem. So it begs the question, when will the realistic sellers who actually want to sell, where are they? Where can we find them? You know, because there's a lot of buyers out there that are ready to talk to them. So this is what I think needs to happen for sellers to become a little bit more realistic in our marketplace, because a lot of them are in a really bad position. Why is that? Because they bought During COVID, they paid way more than they should have. They assumed they were going to love Florida and they were going to want to stay in Florida forever, and now they don't, and they're upside down in their homes. That's a big, big problem. Normally in Southwest Florida, especially in the market that I work, which is in and around Naples, because it's such a cash-heavy market, we never saw an enormous amount of foreclosures. Well, we're starting to see a tick up in foreclosures that I've never seen before, a tick up in short sales that I've never seen before. We danced around it in 2008, but I really feel this is worse. And if you think about the one-off cities like your Cape Corals, your Fort Myers, other cities, Venice even, the increase in inventory is absolutely through the roof. So what is going to cause these sellers to start to become more realistic? Let's talk through that. Number one or two neighbors makes that drop. So let's say you live in a neighborhood. Let's just say you live in, I don't know, Marina Bay in Fort Myers, and everybody's got their houses up at $850,000 to $950,000. And then there's a neighbor who's owned his house for a while. He's going to be realistic because he built it for $378,000 and he puts his out at $600,000. Everybody starts talking about him. What's he doing? What's going on? He sells like that because there are buyers out there that are willing to pay a fair price. They're just not willing to buy instantly underwater. So that prompts somebody else. It says, well, wait a minute. The market's not that bad. Houses will sell. Bill sold. If Bill sold, our house is the same floor plan as Bill's house. So they put their house on the market for a little bit more, $615,000. They sell. Now we're starting to see a precedence. Now once we hit 3 sales, now we have a quorum, so to speak, and the appraisers are going to notice this in the sales. So now those folks that are up into the 800s, they're starting to realize, and hopefully their agents are telling them, look, unless you get a cash buyer that's willing to ignore these recent sales, you're never going to sell that high. And if you do and somebody brings a loan, it's not going to appraise. That will start to take those unrealistic sellers or the sellers that can't go too much lower because they overpaid during COVID. That will take them off the market. It'll just shift them out of the game. Maybe they'll rent. And then it'll shake out the ones who've owned their property for a little while, and maybe they start to become realistic to the idea that, look, you've got to be in the 6s if you want to sell. So I think that's the first shift that needs to happen. The insurance crisis needs to get a little bit tighter. I know it's awful, and I'm not telling you I want that to happen because I absolutely don't. But what we're talking about is ways that people start to get more realistic. So walk down this path with me. You and your wife bought a property. The roof was 9 years old when you bought it in 2019 because you moved from Michigan and you just wanted out of your state. So you bought this beautiful home. You love everything about it. But now your company said, yeah, Jim, we're going to need for you to get back in the office a minimum of 4 days a week. So you're busted and you need to get out of there and make this happen. So now your asphalt shingle roof is 15 years old. But your house is lovely and you know that somebody's going to want it. So you go ahead and put it out there on the market, and somebody does make an offer on it because you priced it realistically. You're going to take a little bit of a bath on your way out, but you're okay with it because you don't want to lose your job. And then the buyer can't get insurance on the property because of the age of the roof. Now we've got a problem because somebody needs to put that roof on. Well, the buyer is saying, well, the roof is coming in at $42,000. And yes, if you are living up north, you might say, are you out of your mind? $42,000 for an asphalt shingle roof? They are high in Florida. I'm from the Midwest. In the Midwest, in most areas around the area that I grew up, you can put an asphalt shingle roof on for the ballpark of $12,000. Not in Florida. It's going to be probably somewhere between $40,000 and $50,000. So now what do? Well, you either have to make that adjustment on what you're offering the house for, because if this buyer can't get insurance, the likelihood of another buyer being able to get insurance is like almost zero. And then you might say, well, then I don't care, I'll just put it out there cash. Well, what cash buyer, a wise cash buyer that has saved enough money to buy your $650,000 house, do you think they're going to be willing to roll the dice and not insure their house because they can't get insurance on the roof? Nobody's going to do that. So it puts you in a really bad position. Buyer demand starts dropping. Now, we have seen a recent increase of buyer demand in this off season. I've been telling you, if you watch my channel, I've been telling you since 2023, sit tight until off season of 2025. We are here. The market is changing. There are really good deals out there. Are they everywhere? No. But can you find that $600,000 seller that's realistic in the presence of all the 850s? Yes, we just have to work a little bit harder to find it. You have to be willing to make some concessions in that. All right, fine, it doesn't have the white cabinets that I wanted, I'll put them in myself. But if you can get the right pricing, and there's 14 houses on the market, and there are 2 that basically work for you, I always say work to a 90% solution, and they're willing to be realistic on their sales price, those are the ones that you go for. So as this starts to happen, and those that are willing to kind of work their way through the marketplace, find the right home for themselves, they will get something. They'll lock something down. But what's going to remain are all of these sellers that are going to be now through another entire year. And guess what starts in June? In June, we start hurricane season. So if another massive tropical storm, a flood, a hurricane, even if it's just a category 1, that might do the trick to start tilting things a little bit more. Just that fear factor might start tilting things a little bit more towards reality. When sellers start to realize that, look, it is not the COVID market. We are not in a COVID market anymore. You can't look at that. You can't look at things that way. You can't price your home that way. As the sellers who can't sell because they overpaid, or, I would even say this, I hear this one all the time too. The sellers that will say, well, I don't want to live in this area anymore. I don't want to live in Bonita Springs, and I found something that I really, really like in the Villages, and unless I get $700,000 for my house that really should be priced $450,000, unless I get $700,000, then I can't move to the Villages. So I'm sticking at my $700,000. Listen to me. Listen to me. Tough love here. No one cares. No one cares. If you get your home in the Villages where you can play pickleball every single day, no one cares. They're not going to pay $250,000 more than what the house is worth so that you can move to the Villages. I'm trying to help you here. So I think these are the things that need to happen before we get these sellers out of delusional land.